So, all right, Steve. First of all, I did want to say you mentioned this, but you have a channel. You have a channel that's in your name, and then you have another channel. Both of them are linked in the description. You have another channel that is the Non Sequitur Show. And about 5 years ago, I guess, when I really started taking this much more seriously on YouTube, um, that was when Non Sequitur Show, if I have the years right, was a really strong debate channel, and modern day debate, and Cameron Bertuzzi's channel, and places where people debate now, weren't what they are now. And at that time, one of the places people would go was the Non Sequitur Show, and there was some things that happened with that show for a while that people can research on their own. And or I mean, you can speak to those if you want, but the bottom line is both of those are linked in the description. And Steve's paper is linked in the description. Now,
Yes.
that's important because we're going to be discussing at least the key idea, if not specifically some things in that paper during this this broadcast. Because what Steve has been influential with respect to this paper has become one that a lot of people in the apologetics and theology geek arena have really come to appreciate this, because his article seeks to show that if one, and I'll let you'll say this better than me, but if one were to hold to what could be called the weak atheist position, that is, rather than saying, I believe that God does not exist, but instead said, I just don't believe in God. I lack a belief, as it's sometimes put, that leads to what could be called a semantic collapse, where at least three terms in this discussion seem to lose the potency in their meaning. So, Steve, am I setting this up well? You take it from here for a moment.
Yeah, no, that's actually pretty much it. That's it. Thanks for joining. Yeah, I think you expressed it really well. I mean, I think my paper's a little more complicated, but yeah, you got the gist. Because, I mean, to break it down, originally there was this term called atheos, and there was the Greek term, and it meant basically somebody who denied worship of the state-sanctioned pantheonic gods, the Roman gods, and it referred to Christians. Right? It was referring to Christians that worship this monotheistic God. And so they were without favor of the gods. They weren't without belief. They were without favor of the gods, because these Roman gods denied them their request, and basically denied them favor because they were no longer being worshipped. And so the term atheos has had many meanings over the years. And then about in the 16th century, and I'm going to butcher this French, sorry, but I think it was atheism, but it meant the denial, or the denying of God's existence. And so for the last 400 years, that was really how the word atheist was used in the academic literature. It was somebody who believed there was no God, or denied God's existence, a theory, dogma, doctrine of God's non-existence. You see all these terms being used. And then in 1972, a man named Anthony Flew wrote a paper called The Presumption of Atheism that tried to argue that it would be better for atheists to use atheism, or think of atheism as in the negative case, as in merely the non-belief of God's existence. And my paper basically shows if you take Flew's argument to its final conclusion, you basically now have three terms that have lost such axiological value that they are not just ambiguous, but they mean the same thing. That a person could semantically be a theist, and atheist, and agnostic at the same time. And if that's the case, why would we want to bother to have nuances of these positions?
Yeah, and maybe at the beginning of this, Steve, you could speak to the question, and maybe you don't have so much to say about this. Maybe it's purely an academic thing for you, but even just with the academic side of things, why do you think this is important enough to get right?
I think it's important because, well, a few things, and I'm a non-believer. You guys know this clearly, but I do have a lot of respect for both theists and atheists. So far, yeah. Well, hey, look, if Dr. Josh Rasmussen hasn't got me there, but he's trying. He's trying.
He doesn't have. Here's the problem, Steve Josh doesn't. There's a process for this in evangelicalism. We get a cassette tape player, and we play a song out of the old hymn book, Just As I Am, Without One Plea. And then you come forward and place your faith in Christ. And we're looking forward to that happening at the end of this service.
Is that how it works? Episode. I've been so confused on that. Yeah. Well, I actually was a theist. I was a theist at one time.
Yeah. They'll play that song long enough till somebody goes up front just so they can dismiss church and go to lunch.
I don't get to go have lunch if we don't.
Yeah.
I know. Everybody becomes Christian, and then Sunday rolls around. I'm not going. I'm sleeping in. Well, it's funny. I've even one of your mods as a friend of mine that was from another channel agreed to argue when I did a show with Dr. Fuzz Rana from Reasons to Believe organization, Dr. Hugh Ross's organization. And so I did a show with them for quite some time. which was really, really fun. But yeah, so why this is important is because theist and atheist, there's different levels of people that get into these discussions. And you have what I call not just low-hanging fruit, but fruit on the ground. People that are so low on their discussions that they're just not worth having a discussion with. And so I try to elevate the discussion so that if you're going to be talking about these things, you at least have a basic understanding, because the theists have upped their game. They have very difficult arguments. I mean, anybody who's read, like Rasmussen, we mentioned, his stuff's not easy. Press is not easy. Swinburne is not easy. And so when they're still, in the arguing against somebody like Ken Hovind, who, we've all had instances with, it's not that difficult, right? And so I want atheists to be at least rational and not use bad argumentation, just like I don't want theists to use bad argumentation. And I think that when they started subscribing to this whole, atheism is merely a lack of belief, without looking into the ramifications of that argument, they've fallen prey to the very thing that they seek to argue against, irrational thinking, or at least not as high level thinking as they should be doing, because none of them have sat there and go, should I use this? Is this a term in this context that makes sense to use in that way? And if you actually look at it, it simply doesn't. And I think my paper has actually shown that by using what's called a square of opposition.
So let me, yes. Wait.
Before you say anything, something very interesting has developed in the chat. And Steve, this may be someone you know, Siggy Sigwald.
I do know Siggy. Yeah, he's a member, a friend of mine.
Siggy just not only gave us an incredible super chat.
Thank you, Siggy.
But looks like he's handing out channel memberships to people or something.
He is being a patron. He's been not only us, but to our followers here.
I didn't even know that was a thing you could do.
Oh yeah,
yeah. You know what's funny is I will tell you, Siggy and I disagree on a lot of stuff. We are not ideologically compatible, and yet I like the guy. We get along. We had some instances on Twitter a while back. We as adults talked about them, and we became friends. He's a patron of mine. He has given memberships out, and we can discuss things like two adult people, and that's what I like. And so yeah, he appreciates good conversation. So that means he likes your
channel. He said it was a thank you for featuring Steve McRae on your channel, Hell Sagan. And he gave us 666. So.
Yeah.
Hell Sagan.
Thank you, Siggy. That is so meaningful. And
we're 616 guys in Revelation, but that's fine.
That's fine.
So to set this up, and I do want to talk about the your truth tables and your table of opposition and all that. But before we get into the weeds of the paper, just to set this up for some of the more laypersons in there, I want to tell a little story about Braxton Hunter debating Matt Dillahunty. Okay, I'm not sure if you ever saw that debate, but during the question and answer portion at the conclusion of the debate, a follower of our channel got up.
First question, I think.
Yeah, and asked, his name is Drew Beatty, and asked Matt Dillahunty why he called himself an atheist, because, after his whole shtick of I don't know and I'm not convinced and I don't know. And he said, all these academic literature defines atheism as the belief there is no God and making a positive claim. And Matt Dillahunty lost his composure a little bit compared to his behavior in the rest of the debate, and pretty much dressed the guy down, hollering about, I host the atheist experience, I know what an atheist is, and blah, 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 and I'm not making any positive. And so pretty much tried to holler about it, to poor Drew for asking what seems to be, and you note this in your paper, the general assumption that the atheist is the one who believes there is no God. But he kind of went off on him about it. So why was the questioner, Drew, in the right and Matt Dillahunty in the wrong?
Okay. One of the reasons I actually like that question is because I can't prove this, so don't ask me to. But I know what you're referring to. And if I remember correctly, Matt had mentioned the word agnostic a few times, and he's seething when he mentioned it. He's thinking of me. I'm not even joking. I really believe he was thinking of me, because whenever he mentions the word agnostic,
and this is not you, I can speak for you. This is not necessarily you having main character syndrome. Like that. No. Yeah. No, there are feelings about you in the community, yes. I think.
Yeah, Matt and I go way back. He's been on the Non Sequitur show. So matter of fact, I'll throw this out there. The whole thing on agnostic atheism, he's changed his position on within the last couple of years. And the arguments used to change his mind were my arguments. There's no question about this, because he says,
wait, who you changed whose mind on it?
Matt Dillahunty.
He postured differently because
on the phrase agnostic atheist. If you look at those multi-axial diagrams where you have the quadrants, he no longer uses them. He thinks that the phrase agnostic atheism in the weak case is nonsensical, and he's absolutely right. And all that came from a lot of arguments that I've had over the years with people, and that people that also know Matt. So if you ever listen to him talk about the phrase agnostic atheism, he'll mention my name with it and then go off on some tangent of why he blocked me, which he gets wrong. Go figure. But yeah, so when he hears the word agnostic, he thinks of me, because I've been so entrenched in this argument for so many years, and I'm sure that Matt knows about my paper. I mean, there's really, I find it difficult that he doesn't, but there's no way he can really refute the logic. The logic has been checked many times. And yes, I think we found a small grammatical error in this paper just recently. But I'll get to that. But as far as the argument, this has been vetted multiple times by logicians and mathematicians. And as far as the validity of the argument, it's sound. It's logically valid and sound. The premises are true. And so when you're talking about, when he asked that question to Matt about why is it that you are promoting atheism in the weak case, fun fact, Matt has said on the Atheist Experience, he believes there's no God. He's not an agnostic. Yeah, if you go back to the earlier years when he was on cable access, he will actually say God doesn't exist, right? And so he is what the paper would be saying a strong atheist. But he, like Flew and David Silverman and a lot of those more new atheists, they wanted atheism to be anybody who just merely lacked a belief. And that's what they were pushing for. So he kind of changed what he was pushing for over the years, of not pushing so much for the belief that there's no God, but he was advocating for more of the agnostic position of merely non-belief. So that's true. And that's why he got upset, because he's being called out for, why would you want two positions to be exactly the same? I mean, there's a reason why we have three positions here, because on any proposition you can believe, you can disbelieve, or you can withhold judgment. You can suspend judgment. That's just three epistemic dispositions. There's a fourth one, which is you can believe both, but I think we would agree that's epistemically a contradiction, right?